Good evening, folks. Welcome to the trial of Mr. Brown versus State. Today we are trying Mr. Brown for the murder of a county social worker from New York, Ms. Sabina Kulakowski. In today's trial, we'll first hear from the prosecution side and the defense side, and then we'll hear from three persons involved in the case. Thank you.
On May 23rd in Auburn, New York, Sabina Kulakowski, a county social worker, was found beaten, strangled, and stabbed to death in a field near the upstate New York farmhouse where she lived. The victim had been bitten numerous times all over her body, and many of the injuries were inflicted after her death. As if the crime itself was not gruesome enough, Kulakowski's farmhouse had also been set on fire. As fate would have it, the murder occurred days after Roy Brown finished an 8-month sentence for drunkenly threatening to blow off another county social worker's head with a shotgun if he did not allow Roy visitation with his daughter, who had been placed in a residential care facility a year earlier. Roy had also exchanged several phone calls about his daughter's case with Ms. Kulakowski a few days earlier leading up to her murder. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution has built a strong evidence portfolio in addition to the clear motive that Mr. Brown had to kill Ms. Kulakowski. First of all, the forensic evidence will show that 5 of the bite marks found on her body were entirely consistent with Roy's teeth patterns. Secondly, the prosecution has contacted a neighbor of the victim who identified Mr. Brown driving away in a hurry as the fire started. We have also obtained traffic monitoring records placing Mr. Brown very close to the scene of the crime. On top of the testimonies that we will present to you, the prosecution also has Mr. Brown's admission of guilt, to which he has confessed in a phone conversation with a former inmate. After looking at the evidence that we aim to present to the court throughout the trial, the District Attorney's Office has full faith in your ability to freely and fairly judge the guilt of the defendant.
Throughout today's trial, you will be hearing the prosecution mislead you into believing that Roy Brown, a boyfriend, employee, and father, committed a crime that he did not commit. Roy loves his daughter, his family, and his girlfriend. He's had a stable job for 10 years. He is described by friends and family as a good man, a man not capable of violence, a man who would never kill a fly. The prosecution is going to spin a story and pin this crime on Roy, even though all of their evidence is either faulty or doubtful. They're going to say that Roy had a vendetta against Sabina because she works at the social services agency he was angry at involving the placement of his daughter. But simply being upset at someone does not equate to murdering that person. The prosecution will then tell you that they have forensic bite mark evidence, but we will prove that the evidence is highly unreliable. Then, they will try and tell you that a neighbor, Ida Johnson, saw Roy driving away, but eyewitness testimony has time and time again been proven to be faulty. We, however, will tell you that Roy was with his girlfriend the evening of May 23rd, and that Roy is not someone who would ever be capable of such a crime. Roy Brown has been falsely accused, and we expect the jury to fulfill justice. As the jury, to convict Roy Brown, you would be saying not just that it's possible that he killed Sabina, or likely that he killed Sabina, but that beyond a reasonable doubt he killed Sabina. Thus, if you have any reason throughout this trial to doubt that he killed her, you must side with the defense.
Hello, Mr. Reeves. Can you state your name for the record?
Hello, my name is Dr. Patrick Reeves.
And what are your qualifications to testify in this case?
I have a bachelor's in biology from Harvard University, a master's and PhD in forensic criminology from Stanford, and I've worked for about 20 years in the field of forensic criminology, either for police departments across the country or in the private sector consulting with defense attorneys.
So with that out of the way, Dr. Reeves, can you tell us what tests you've conducted for the case?
I conducted a bite mark analysis. I found 7 bite marks at various points on the victim's body, and using dental records from the defendant, I compared his teeth to the marks left on the body.
And what were your conclusions?
2 of the 7 marks were too faint to be used. The other 5 matched the defendant's teeth. Each of those 5 bites had an over 90% match with the defendant's teeth.
How certain do your methods make your findings?
Very. A match of over 75% means it is highly likely the bite was left by the tested teeth. One of over 90% indicates a near certain match.
Did you conduct any of these tests on other people?
I did. I conducted tests on 20 different individuals who had some connection to today's case. Roy Brown was the only match.
And was one of those 20 individuals, Barry Bench, the other suspect in this case?
Yes, it was.
And did you conduct any other tests on any of the two individuals?
There were small drops of saliva left on 2 of the bite marks. I tested them and found a match for the defendant's saliva. However, the remnants were too small for me to say definitively that the saliva did come from the defendant, though the general profiles did match.
Doctor, now you can't tell us with absolute certainty that the bite marks came from Mr. Brown, can you?
While these tests show as much certainty as there can be, with this science you can never be 100% certain.
And bite mark analysis is an error rate of 10%?
Yes, for each individual bite mark, not for the overall analysis.
And there were 2 bite marks that you couldn't test.
That's right, they were too faint.
So you don't know if those were left by, say, Barry Bench.
I don't know.
And you can't be sure that the saliva came from Mr. Brown, can you?
Like I said before, the general salival profiles matched, but the remnants were too small for me to say definitively it came from him.
No further questions.
Well, Mr. Johnson, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Could you just state your relevance to the case for the trial?
So I've been Sabina's neighbor for the last 5 years, and I was there present at the night of the murder.
So you were home between 8 and 9 p.m. on the night of the May 23rd.
Yes, I was home and I was reading a book.
Did you notice anything suspicious outside?
I did actually. I noticed a bright light outside my window. So I looked and I saw Sabina's house in flames as Roy drove away in a hurry.
And how do you know that the man you saw was the defendant?
So the police had me do a lineup at the station and I picked him out of 5 men, so I'm sure that it was him.
Thank you for your answers.
How old are you, Ida?
I'm 70.
And when's the last time that you went to the eye doctor?
I don't remember, but I wear glasses. I'm nearsighted.
So that means you only need glasses to see things that are far away, correct?
Correct.
So you weren't wearing glasses when you were reading, now were you?
No, but I put them on before I looked out of the window.
So you're saying that in the hurry of seeing the fire outside, you had time to find and put on your glasses?
Yes, I'm sure of it. I was wearing them.
No further questions. Hello, Ms. Jackson. Can you please state your name for the court as well as your relevance to today's case?
My name is Lindsay Jackson. I've been Roy's girlfriend for about 6 months.
What can you tell us about him?
He's a good man. He's really caring. He works really hard. All he wants is to get his daughter back. He misses her so much.
Where were you the night of the crime?
I was with Roy. We were together all night.
And where were you?
We were at my house.
Do you think Roy is capable of committing such a heinous crime like this?
Absolutely not. Roy would never hurt anybody.
Thank you, Lindsay. No further questions.
Hello, Mrs. Jackson. You described the defendant as being caring. Others who know him have stated that he has had past troubles with alcohol. Is this true?
Okay, so he drinks a little, but he can handle it.
Does he get violent when he's drunk?
Not violent. He yells a little, but who doesn't yell when they're drunk?
He drunkenly threatened another social worker close to the victim. Is this in line with the defendant's normal behavior when he's drunk?
Look, he wants his daughter back, and he gets aggressive about it when he's drunk.
So you said you were with the defendant. Is that true?
Yes, we watched a movie at my house.
All night.
Yes.
Your house, the house that is located in Seneca Falls, New York, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So is your home close to Auburn?
I'd say about 15 minutes.
So I have here records from traffic monitoring systems. It placed the defendant's license plate half a mile from the victim's home at 8:07 p.m. Can you explain this?
Oh, right. Roy ran out to run errands. He said he needed to go before the shop closed.
Run errands? Do you know where exactly he went?
No, he didn't tell me.
And around what time did he leave?
Maybe 7:45.
So let me get this straight. You and the defendant were together in your home about 15 minutes away from the scene of the crime. The defendant then leaves at around 7:45 and is placed half a mile from the victim's home at 8:07, when the crime itself has occurred between 8 and 9 p.m. that night. Is this correct?
Yeah, but you're twisting the story a little. That's not what exactly
Isn't
happened.
it also true that your carrying boyfriend has confessed to the crime to his former cellmate while he was awaiting his trial?
Objection!
Withdrawn. Thank you for your question.
Now, you, the jury, will have 20 minutes to deliberate to decide whether Roy Brown is guilty or not guilty of murder. The burden that you are presented with is beyond a reasonable doubt. This doesn't mean beyond any doubt. If I came here and told you, well, maybe his twin brother came in and did it, but presented you with absolutely no evidence of that, that might be doubt. It's not really reasonable. Reasonable doubt is more so there's a plausible alternate suspect. There is serious reason to doubt an important clinching piece of evidence. That's reasonable doubt. So if you think Roy Brown is guilty beyond reasonable doubt, vote to convict. If you think Roy Brown is not guilty, if you think there is reasonable doubt, vote not guilty.